Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Johnson. I'm a specialist solution architect at AWS for mobile. And today we're going to talk about how to build a full stack mobile application using AWS Amplify and AppSync. So our agenda for today, we have a 30-minute presentation. Most of it is going to be a demo, which I think is pretty cool. And we're going to show you basically how to build a mobile application start to finish, starting with the back end and then moving on to the client development. Before we get started, we're going to set some context here. We're going to talk about why mobile development and web development is difficult. Some of the things our mobile product team thought about when they were building the Amplify product line. And then we'll hop right into the demo. So what's difficult about being a mobile or web developer? Years ago, I think I used to see a lot more folks who were dedicated front-end and mobile developers. They would either be web developers or mobile developers specializing in iOS or Android. But today I'm seeing a lot more of our customers have full stack developers. And these are developers that are responsible for the entire application, start to finish. And as such, there's a lot more to think about, right, when you're building these applications. So aside from choosing a platform and choosing a development environment before you get started, you have to worry about security, which is super important for any kind of application served across the internet, and your data layer, right? Most mobile and web applications make use of an API layer of some kind, and building that API, defining it, and then building the backend that supports it can be a challenge. In addition to those technical challenges, you have to worry about things like differentiating your product, making it stand out amongst the millions of other applications that are out there. And of course, this all has to be done in a timely manner. So our mobile product team built Amplify to address these issues. So Amplify can help in a number of ways. One way is to provide a convenient way to take a web application from coding all the way to deployment on AWS. So using the Amplify console, if you have a web application, you can point the console to your code repository where your web application is sitting, and AWS will take it from there, right? It'll read in your code, build it for you, and then deploy it on our cloud using best practices like CloudFront and S3 static hosting. So this is a very cool feature for web application, but for today, we are going to talk about mobile application development. And to do that, we're going to talk about the developer experience using Amplify. Now, when we sit down and build an application, one of the first things we think about is data, right? The interface between the client and the cloud. And what we're going to do in our demo is we're going to start by building a data model for an application. Then we're going to set up authentication and authorization for that. And then we're going to export that environment to our client development environment and show you how to integrate this backend that you just built into a React Native application in this case. We'll be using a very cool feature of Amplify called Data Store. And Data Store is cool because it actually gives you what we call an offline development environment. And by that I mean, while you're building your application, while you're doing queries and updates and even real-time notifications, you don't have to worry about many of the things a networked application worries about, such as conflict resolution or what happens if you lose network connectivity, because the data store library will take care of that for you. It's aware of your network status. It has a local cache that is automatically synced for you with the back end. So if you do go offline, it's smart enough to know to draw data from the cache. When you go online again, it'll update and resync everything for you, which is pretty cool. So with that said, let's talk about the Amplify console. What you're seeing here is the Amplify console with all of the applications that are currently in my account. We're going to build a new one, starting with a back end. So we'll click on back end and we'll name it AWS Summit Mobile. Okay, and as I confirm the deployment of that application, it'll be created in my account. And I'm going to go straight to something called the admin UI. Now, the admin UI is like a dashboard for your application, so you can edit things and monitor your application. So let's go right ahead with the data modeling. And to create a data model for your application, you create an entity called a model, not surprisingly. And for our application, we're building a coffee shop app where your customers will be able to choose items, coffee, snacks from the app, make an order and submit that order to the back end, where hopefully it'll be ready when they show up at the coffee shop. So what we've done here is we've added our first model, and we are going to use 3 different models: product, order, and line item. So there's relationships between product and order. So let's go ahead. We've created product here, and we're going to start adding attributes to the model itself. So we have an ID, which is like an index or a primary key for our model, a SKU, which is represented as a string, and then we're going to add a name, so we know what to call it, also a string, and a price, which is going to be a float. So let's make that a float, and then an image, which is also represented by a string. So we have our first model here, and we're going to add a second one, which, get over to the right model. So the second model is going to be an order, and the order represents the list of things that the customer is buying, right? So we have a total, which is going to be a price and a float. We have a subtotal, which is also a float. And we have tax, right? Can't have a subtotal without tax, which is also a float. And lastly, we're going to store when this was created, and the created time is going to be stored as a string in this case. So we have products and we have an order, but there's another model I mentioned just now, which is our line item. So each order is going to have one or more line items, and each line item is associated with a single product. So let's go ahead and create line items. And we have our ID, and we're going to add a quantity. So the number of products in that line item, which is going to be an integer. And next we have the line item description. We have the price for that line item, which is going to be the price times the quantity. And lastly, a total for our line item. Okay, so we've created our 3 models we need for our application, but we haven't associated these models with each other. We haven't created any relationships yet. And one of the cool things about the admin UI is that we're able to create relationships between these models. So first, I'm going to create a relationship from the order model to the line item, right? So it gives us a little hint here. We want one order to many line items, right? That's what we want. And for consistency, I'm going to change the attribute name to line items with lowercase, and click save, and we're done. You can see we've actually added a relationship field to the order model. Now we need a relationship between product and line item. We're going to start on the line item side and associate it with the product model. And since it's a one-to-one relationship, we are going to leave it where it is and make product lowercase as well. Okay, that looks good, and click save. So now we've completed our data model in a couple of minutes, right? And the first thing we want to do with our model is send it to the cloud, right? And Amplify does a great job of taking our project here, right, that we've just defined. It's going to do a few things. It's going to create CloudFormation, which pushes our stack to the cloud. It's also going to create our AppSync GraphQL API. It's going to take this model and make it into a GraphQL schema, as well as setting up DynamoDB on the back end for our database and any resolver logic we have. So we can go straight from sort of this visual representation of our data model to a completed, ready-to-use backend. Okay, so we'll save and deploy it. And we're speeding things up a little for the sake of the demo. And in a couple seconds here, we will have a completed backend. Okay, you can see the deployment status is successful, and Amplify is giving us some hints on how to incorporate this environment into our application, and we will do that in a minute. But first, we're going to add another feature to our application, right? We're going to add authentication and authorization. So I can just head over to the left here and click on the authentication tab. And authentication is going to be implemented by Cognito user pools. And what I have here is sort of a little window into the configuration of that user pool. So it starts off with email as your login identifier. I'll leave it there. But you do have some options too, right? You can use phone number, you can use username, and you can even do social logins like Facebook, Google, and Amazon. We're not using multi-factor authentication, but it's here, and you can turn it on with a click of a button. You can do the 2FA using an SMS message or an authentication app. Next thing are custom fields you can add to your identities in the user pool. So these are things that can be collected during registration of your users, and you can add those to the user pool. And then you have some options around password, right? You can, the length and the strength of the password can be adjusted, as well as how you want your forgotten password messages to be sent back, either SMS or email. Okay, so for the most part, we'll leave it the way it is, but the important thing is we're creating a Cognito user pool that we can associate with our data model. So let's go ahead and save and deploy our project again, and that's going to create the Cognito user pool at the back end. Okay, so now we have a Cognito user pool and we have a fully equipped GraphQL API. Next step is we are going to associate the GraphQL API with our Cognito user pool. And you can see here, that's a significant change. We're going to confirm it. And now we have access to authorization within the admin UI. So I can go ahead and click on, let's see, let's go down to product, and I'm going to create some authorization rules, okay? And since this is public information, the product, basically our menu, we can say any signed in user has the ability to read that data, right? But we still need a way to create that data and edit it, right? So I'm going to create a new user group called baristas. And the baristas at our coffee shop will be able to create new products for us, right? So let's go ahead and add a rule for baristas that will be able to create, read, update, delete, right? So they'll be able to do all the CRUD operations. And that should take care of it for product. We can actually click on each of the other models and give them their own authorization rules, right? So because people don't want to see each other's orders, we're going to use owner, right? The owner is the identity of the person who created the data, right? So owners will be able to create and read their data. Baristas, on the other hand, they really just need to read it. So we'll leave it like that. Should they delete it? No, let's not do that. And then we have orders, right? And we're just going to set this up the same way as the line items, right? So the owners can create and read that data, but the baristas will just be able to read it. Okay. So that looks like all we need for authorization. So we can save and deploy that as well. When this gets deployed, the resolvers for the GraphQL API will be rewritten to include that logic, which is pretty cool. Okay, now we're ready to incorporate this environment into our client application. So let's go ahead and do that. You can see there's an amplify CLI command here called amplify pull. So I am going to click on that, copy it to the clipboard, and head over to my client IDE. But before we do that, let's go ahead and bring up the application. This is what the application looks like now. It's just a skeleton application, right? I've put basically all the scaffolding here, all the UI stuff is ready for us to actually put some data into this application, which is what we're going to do now, right? Okay, so minimize that. And we're going to bring up our IDE. And there's our project directory Expo Test. It's just a React Native project directory. I've got my components in a separate directory there, right? Each component represents a page in the application. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a terminal because I want to run that amplify pull command that I copied off of the admin UI. And what amplify pull does is it goes to the cloud and says, okay, I want the environment for this application and I want it put inside my project directory. And this is going to save you a lot of work because it's actually pulling down all the configuration and all the metadata you need to communicate with the back end. So one cool feature about projects inside the admin UI is you have the ability to create users in your development project, right? So in this case, it's actually telling us to log in the browser. I did that off screen. And once I'm logged in here, I have permissions to pull down that data and it immediately starts to detect my environment, right? So I'm using Visual Studio Code as my editor. It knows it's a JavaScript project, identifies it as React Native, and so I can just hit the defaults here for the rest of the configuration. Now that Amplify knows it's React Native, it'll put directories and files in the proper directories in this project. So now we're going to clear the terminal and take a look at what it's created in our project here. So the first thing is the AWS exports file, which is a configuration file that contains ARNs, IDs, all sorts of information about how Amplify needs to be configured on the client to communicate with the backend. So this just gets imported as a JavaScript object into the libraries, and you don't have to worry about it. It's auto-generated. If you make changes, the AWS exports will change as well. We also have an Amplify directory in our project now. And if you go to the back end, you can see our API, which is an AppSync GraphQL API. And you'll see the GraphQL schema that was generated from our data model. So if you're curious about that, you can take a look at that as well. The next thing is going to be models. Okay, so our data model is represented here as metadata. The data store libraries will take a look at these model definitions, and it'll enable it to build the cache and do the synchronization with the backend for you. Okay, and let's see. So all these things are provided for you automatically, and you really don't have to think about them, right? The main thing to think about is your client code. So let's take a look at that. We have a settings page, which is empty right now. And we're going to put some features on here. So we're going to start by importing data store library and then the auth library from Amplify, because we're going to put a sign out button on this page. The first thing is a button to create products. So we'll need a way to actually create these products in the script. We'll create a random mashup of nouns and pictures that represent the products in our coffee store. Okay, so that's just going to call a script. The next one is a button to clear data store. So data store has a local cache that can be cleared. That's useful to have for development. And lastly, we're going to have a log off button, right? And we can call those by just adding buttons here to the interface. And this is one of the really cool things about React Native. It's really simple to put together a UI with what looks like, HTML. So that's really cool. So our settings page is finished. And now let's take a look at the catalog. The catalog is going to read the product list from our data store. So let's go ahead and add the data store library. And we're going to import a model that we're going to be using here, which is the product, right? We're going to read a list of products. So we get the definition from the models directory. We have a fetch products function that is just going to do a query. And in our case, it's just datastore.query, and we pass it the name of the model we want to fetch. And we're done, right? We have all the data read in with one line of code. Okay. So that's ready. Next thing we want to do is a checkout. Now the checkout's a little more complicated because we're going to be creating line items and the associated order. So once again, we're going to import the data store library, and we're also going to import order, line item, and product because we're going to be building a data structure that we're going to save to our data store here. So under submit order, the first thing we do is create a new order object that we're going to save to data store. You can see the attributes are all being pulled from the local application, right? From the state of the application. And that gives us our parent object. The next thing we want to create is our line items. So we'll have one line item per product. And so we do a map there that creates a new line item for each element in that map. And we're going to refer to the parent order using the order attribute. Okay. And since all these are asynchronous, we're just going to do an await promise for all of those. And we're done. And that allows us to save our data to the cloud. Last thing I want to look at is the orders page. This is displaying the historical orders. It works a lot like the catalog page. We're just going to do a read on order and line item. Once we import the libraries, we're going to do actually something new here. We have a subscription, which is possible through the data store observe function. Now, data store observe means I want to be notified anytime something happens to this model element, right? So I'm observing the order model. So if somebody creates, deletes, or modifies an order, I will be notified via a notification. And that's made possible through AppSync's GraphQL subscription model. So once I get notified of that data, I can just do a data store query on order to make sure I get the latest data. That's one way to do it, is to requery. Another way to do it is just to incorporate the new data into your cache, right? All right, so now I have the historical order list set up, and I'm going to save this code. All right. So let's go ahead, minimize that, and I'll bring up my Expo environment for React Native, which allows me to kick off the iOS simulator. And what's going on here is Expo is bundling my JavaScript code and embedding it in the iOS environment, sort of like a library, right? So you can see immediately, because we have authorization enabled, it pops up a login. I'm just going ahead and using a login that I've created previously. And once I'm in, we see nothing. And we see nothing because this is the catalog page. We haven't created any products yet, right? So let's go to settings. We created that create dummy products button. And once I click the button and refresh, you can see some really interesting menu items here. So I'm just going to go ahead and buy some organic pancakes and ginger tea for breakfast. That's not bad. I click subtotal, sorry, and that will give me my checkout screen. So this is where the data actually gets saved, and you can see the hierarchy of line items and orders here. All I have to do is click checkout, and that'll be saved. And I can see the historical order, the one I just created, right there, just the way we want it. Okay. So one last thing, we could clear the local data if we wanted to start again. That's a handy thing to have, and it's also good to do automatically when you log out of an application to make sure Data Store doesn't have anything from a previous owner. Once we log out, we're sent right back to the login page. So one of the things I mentioned earlier is that mobile developers have to, one of the things they have to do is determine which platform they're going to develop their application on. And when they were creating Amplify, the mobile team at AWS did a great job supporting a number of our customers' favorite platforms. And it covers everything from JavaScript, different flavors of that, to native and iOS and Android, and cross-platform options like React Native, which we just saw, and Flutter, which is another cross-platform environment for mobile. So, the choice of what we work on is actually up to our customers. Our roadmaps are driven by, feedback from our customers. So if there's anything you'd like to see in Amplify, there's actually a really great way for you to let us know, and that is by joining our Amplify team. Amplify libraries and the Amplify CLI that we saw in use today are both open source projects that are hosted on GitHub. We have a very active and enthusiastic community, and this is a great way for you to just sort of chime in and say, hey, this is really good, or wow, I'd really love to see this as a feature. And you can even go one step further and help us out by submitting code to the project, and we're always looking for new partners to help us out and make this even better. Okay, so I'm really grateful that everyone's shown up at the session today. This summit is a part of our commitment to making sure our customers know everything they need to know about AWS and help them use it to be successful, right? So we have a couple of different ways to help you out in training. We have digital training courses like this. Classroom training is available. We have, of course, our certification programs that allow you to test and be certified in various AWS technologies, as well as other education programs. And if you're an AWS customer, there's a lot of enterprise resources as well. So once again, thank you for coming to the session. I hope it was a little bit entertaining and hopefully informational for you and help you make some decisions about how you want to do your next project. Myself and the rest of the mobile team at AWS are happy to help you in any way we can. And one way you can help us is by filling out your surveys at the end of the presentation. We read all of them. We treat them as our most valuable data. The information from our customers is used to drive everything from features that we work on roadmaps to new services, and of course, the way we communicate with you through training like we did today. So if you liked what you saw or you thought it needed some work, we're happy to hear it either way. And we look forward to seeing you at one of the other sessions here at the summit. So thanks.